You are listening to 95.7 FM WELT, Fort Wayne, Radioactive. The opinions and views expressed in this show are that of the hosts and guests only. They do not represent those of FreeThought Fort Wayne, Secular Fort Wayne, WELT, or any other organization. How can I live in society if I don't believe in God? How can I understand the world around me without religion? What can I do to make the world a better place? Where did we come from? How can I be a moral person? These are just some of the profound questions we as humans have pondered for millennia. Join us as we ponder these questions free from the ideologies of religion and superstition. Welcome to the Hoosier Humanist Hour, where we explore science, religion, culture, ethics, and community from the humanist perspective. I'm your host Andrew, and this is episode 3 of the Hoosier Humanist Hour. In this episode, the regular cast of characters, Drake, V, Chris, D, and myself, discuss what humanism is and what it means to us.
I think the whole point of this podcast is kind of that, hey, we're the Hoosier Humanist Hour, but what is a humanist? Someone who's listening to this or hearing us talk, why do we find this to be special? Why is our opinion different from anyone else's? And really, what is humanism to us?
So I guess that's a question. Is that strictly what we identify ourselves as? Or are there other words that we can each identify ourselves as? Kind of
I was gonna bring that up. If humanism and atheism are one and the same, and I think they kind of share some qualities, but I think atheist is more the broad category, and then if you define humanism, you're kind of bringing it down a little bit further into the, ranking system or filing system.
Could you believe in like a deity and still consider yourself a humanist?
I don't know. I've often pondered that as well, because I have heard of the term Christian humanist or other religious humanist, or even secular humanist, which would kind of then denote that there's a non-secular humanist. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
So on the American Humanist Association webpage, they do list several definitions for humanism. There's even something called Christian humanism, is defined by Webster's Third New International Dictionary as a philosophy advocating the self-fulfillment of men within the framework of Christian principles. And I think there's two definitions that are most important. There's secular and religious humanism, where they basically mean the same thing, only the people that consider themselves religious humanists consider humanism to be a religion as opposed to the secular humanists, which consider it a philosophy.
Yeah, could you just call humanism the non-religious part of religion? I mean, it's, most of the time, churches are doing different charitable works and different philanthropy works and things, is humanism just that portion minus the God belief?
Well, if you look at those articles that were posted to FreeThought a little while ago, back when we did the handing out to the homeless, there were definitely some websites that disagreed with us doing the thing that was good and right and true. More just took it as an opportunity for us to peddle our wares in a way that wasn't necessarily the most conducive to spreading our influence, I guess. It was very weird. It was very, very weird. Basically, the articles were talking about us sitting there and serving soup, despite the fact all we were serving was goodie bags for the homeless. And this particular article was a religious-based article that discussed how people had perceived our presence, as far as being like, oh, well, it's about time people of non-faith actually contribute in some degree. It's odd.
Yeah. Well, there was one article that even considered or thought that we were a ministry.
Yes. The homeless ministry, was that it?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Well, we kind of fall into this kind of in-between, kind of a weird segment. We kind of ran into this when we discussed religion in the workplace and how, in order to protect, a non-belief, atheism is actually considered under the law to be a religion. So it's kind of an odd sort of position to be put in.
Well, because it is considered a religion by law, we can have a humanist celebrant that can perform weddings.
And I would actually further clarify that it's it's maybe not necessarily considered a religion. It's considered a belief system, which of course is confounding because the belief system is actually absence of belief, but that gets at other points.
Yeah, it gets fairly convoluted there, yeah.
Well, there's an awful lot of beliefs that I run into from humanists, myself included. So I wouldn't say that a lack of belief is a prerequisite for it.
I would say a lack of belief in a higher power is a prerequisite to some degree.
It depends how you define the higher power. I mean, there are certainly people that are stronger than me. They have more power than I do, but they're not supernatural.
Yeah, and
So-
we even
Sorry,
welcome.
go ahead.
I mean, we've got a resident pantheist in in the FreeThought group. So
Yeah.
where does that put that opinion?
Right. I mean, in my opinion, as long as it's, you don't believe in the gray bearded man in the sky, your beliefs are compatible with humanism as I understand it.
My belief is that you, me, Thunderdome, then we can decide who's more powerful. There we go.
Initiation.
Yeah.
So I guess have we defined humanism? I mean, have we? I think we've talked about who is and who isn't, maybe. But does anyone have their own definition of humanism?
I put up that little quote up there on the chat. I thought that was a pretty good.
Are there any snippets or anything that you'd like to read from that quote?
Humanism is a philosophy, worldview, or life stance based on naturalism, the conviction that the universe or nature is all that exists or is real. Humanism serves for many humanists some of the psychological and social functions of a religion, but without belief in deities, transcendental entities, miracles, life after death, and the supernatural. Humanists seek to understand the universe by using science and its methods of critical inquiry, logical reasoning, empirical evidence, and skeptical evaluation of conjectures and conclusions to obtain reliable knowledge. Humanists affirm that humans have the freedom to give meaning, value, and purpose to their lives by their own independent thought, free inquiry, and responsible creative activity. Humanists stand for the building of a more humane, just, compassionate, and democratic society using a pragmatic ethics based on human reason, experience, and reliable knowledge, an ethics that judges the consequences of human actions by the well-being of all life on Earth. Stephen Schaeffer's men. Jeez.
Yeah, I think that kind of is an all-encompassing little quote there. I like that.
To me, what I would say on humanism is just three words: good without God, or the first sentence out of the Humanist Manifesto 3. Humanism is a progressive philosophy of life that, without supernaturalism, affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good of humanity. I think that's it's a
No, that
very,
brings
very
up
good,
a-
concise definition.
Yeah, that brings up a good point as far as how you can get ethics or morality without a god.
Well, without any kind of religion giving you some idea of what is supposed to be the greater good, then I can't think of anything else other than humans, our own existence as being the priority of existence. Not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily mean destroying everything, but making our environment as viable to the expression of humanity as we possibly can.
And I mean, part of humanism is recognizing that we're just one part of nature, and that, as I hate to use the, most evolved creature out there, but we have a responsibility to take care of all the other parts, since we are powerful enough to destroy them and to affect them in many unintended ways, or in many ways that no other creature can.
My question has always been, does everybody have a duty to make life better? I mean, in this country, you're allowed to do whatever you want. And that means you can be selfish little prick if you want. But we, for the most part, look down upon those people. But is it okay for those people to be that way? Since that's a natural expression of who they are?
Yeah, but nobody would want to play nice with them or
True.
be their friends. So it'd be a very, very lonely existence. And I've always been of the philosophy that, your freedom to swing your arms ends at my nose.
Right.
So, if your actions affect me, I have the right to take action and defend myself. So if you want to be quote unquote bad, then go and steal and take things from people, because that's the easier way to become rich and to achieve some goals, is to just cheat the system and progress in life. But eventually that catches up with you. You start affecting people in negative ways, and as a society we've decided that people that cheat the system go to jail, and I think that's fair.
I think so too.
So you may not have some kind of an inherent responsibility to be good, but you should be good, A, because it benefits you, B, because it benefits everybody else, C, because we've made laws.
So the ultimate expression of humanism might be the legal system as a society, possibly.
Yeah, maybe not so much legal, but I mean, we are communal animals. So if we are doing something that disrupts that communal nature, we are harming those around us. We're going to be shunned. The others are going to have actions that show us, hey, that's not okay, and that's going to show us, hey, what we did is not right, and we probably shouldn't do that again if we want to continue to live in this society.
I mean, I think back in tribal times, thousands of years ago, there was no jails, right? So they couldn't put you in jail. But what societies did was they just shun you. They throw you out. You weren't allowed back into the tribe, and no man is an island. So that was likely, sentencing you to a very miserable existence or practical certainty of death in some cases.
Yeah.
So people have always had ways to deal with cheaters and people that don't want to play by the rules of society.
Well, nowadays it's a popular movement to be shunned.
Well, and some people shun themselves deliberately. I mean, there's plenty of people that'll seclude themselves in some, sparsely inhabited area of the world, and they don't want to play by society's rules, and that's fine, in my opinion.
So we're talking about living in communities and societies. As humanists, what do you guys feel? How do you feel when you see public displays of religion?
I'm slightly annoyed by it, but I'm okay with it.
Do you feel that religious beliefs or displays of religion have a right to be in the public square, the public the public eye?
To me, as long as they're on private property, yes. If they're using government property, and if government money are being used for those kind of displays, now government is endorsing religion, so that shouldn't be okay with anyone.
Yeah, I completely agree. As soon as public taxpayer money goes to promoting any religion, I think that's definitely a step over the line. But what do you think about when they say, okay, instead of promoting one religion, we'll make it an open market and promote all religions at once?
Well, as long as they, if it's a public square, say for instance a public square in downtown, everywhere USA, if they have just like Christmas displays, for instance, if they have just if you want to come down and set something up, go for it. It's open to everyone. That's fine by me. Religious people can do that, and a humanist group could do it. But if they're singling out only one religion or even a sect of that religion, that's not cool.
Yeah, I think what you'll find very often is, they'll try to do that, to say, okay, well, we're going to allow everybody, hoping that nobody else from any other religion would try to put their display out there, and sometimes they would. Like, Satanists are a great example, because they like to poke their finger in the eye of religion, and they'll try to put up their statue of Baphomet, I think it's called, and by law they should be allowed. But as soon as that comes up, the entire society is now up in arms, saying how could you allow that? And the pendulum very quickly swings to, okay, well, let's not allow anybody, or it raises a lot of conversation about equality and who should we allow and who we shouldn't allow. Do you guys have any examples for this kind of scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I listen to the Freedom from Religion Foundation's weekly podcast. the title of which escapes me right now. But yeah, they talk about many cases, even some recently here in Indiana, where there have been, I guess specifically the case in Indiana was in Elkhart, and what they were doing, there was a school pageant. All the kids were participating, and it was a Christmas pageant, and it was a specifically endorsed public school, show of promotion of Christianity. So, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, with the help of local parents and people who complained, because of course they can't go in there themselves, they have to go in on behalf of someone who lives in that town, threatened to file suit against the school because that was public money going towards religion. And so what they actually did, I believe that the school set up mannequins on the stage and played a recording of Christmas music so that the children wouldn't be subjected to that, but they could still hold their pageant.
Wow. Wow.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, just statistically, people that identify as Christian, may have been 97.8%, a few decades ago, but today that percentage is a lot lower when you consider people that don't identify with any religion, that identify as atheist, they identify as Muslim, Hindu, Sikhs, whatever other religion. I think you're down to somewhere between 70 and 80% that identify as Christian. So you potentially have 3 out of every 10 kids being excluded from that Christmas celebration. So how can you justify, excluding something like 30% of your students? That just doesn't seem fair.
But it's tradition, and we've always done it this way. We've always had our Christmas pageant, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, just for example, my kid's school, it's a federally funded Head Start program, so they can't have any kind of religion stuff. And plus, they have multicultural like they have at least 4 different cultures that I can think of off the top of my head there. Not all Christian. So what they did they had a holiday concert, I guess you could call it, where the kids got up and just sang popular songs or songs that they created in the classroom. And it was a lot of fun. Everyone just had a blast.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, especially in Fort Wayne, you have a lot of Bosnian refugees, many of whom are Muslim. You have a lot of refugees from Burma or Myanmar. I believe many of them are Buddhist. So you have some larger minorities in Fort Wayne that, may be different from other parts of the country. But so you have to take into account the diversity.
I guess my point is to not forbid different points from being expressed. I'm okay with various viewpoints being expressed, with the understanding that they're all made-up myths and legends. I guess that's the point that I would like to emphasize, personally. Yeah, because once we realize that's all bullcrap, then we can start moving forward and focusing on the real stuff, which is where humanism comes in play, as far as focusing on your fellow man as opposed to magical fairies and whatever else.
Well, we still have the Pledge of Allegiance, and God we trust, and I mean, a lot of these things are built around the idea of a Christian nation. So humanism has a long ways to go before it's a mainstream idea, or at least an overriding opinion that dictates how we make decisions.
The funny thing about that is, in God We Trust was only added, in 50, 60 years ago. But, people... Scare. Yeah, exactly. But people, the founding fathers, Jefferson, Payne, Washington, some of those guys, a lot of them weren't really Christians, or were only marginally Christian. They were mainly deists. There's the Jefferson Bible, where Thomas Jefferson went through the Bible and cut out every single sentence that mentions supernaturalism. Mm-hmm. So those people were very much free thinkers, humanists, and they were at the core of building the nation. And a few hundred years later, a couple hundred years later, we now consider it, it's a Christian nation. And if you say something that it's not, or if you try to challenge the under God or in God we trust, you're almost considered anti-American.
Well, I think it's interesting that the term Christian is actually somewhat new. I mean, relatively speaking, from my understanding, Christian came about that, from a political standpoint, you want all of the people who believe in the biblical God to kind of fall under one umbrella. 100 years ago, if a politician came out and said, "Hey, I'm a Baptist," he completely just shut himself off from Lutherans or Catholics. So to combat that, what they do is, if you say, "I'm Christian," you're putting aside the stark contrasts that you have in your biblical belief, and kind of making amends and going forward and saying we're all Christians, despite how we believe God is different, but we will join and we will become unified under one umbrella.
I was going to say, I think religion has had a really big pull on the furthering of civilization. I don't know if we would have gotten this far if we didn't have humanity had some religions that tied us together in much larger groups than just our tribal natures or our tribal history. I think religion doesn't get enough credit for doing that. But I think humanism is a higher ideal, a higher ethic, or at least forces a higher ethic if you think it through and want to live that way. We have to try to build civilization around that kind of thinking now, because religion is failing us in how we treat the earth and treat each other. It's just not universal. It's too dependent upon everybody's different interpretation of whatever their book of choice is or however they feel. Humanism doesn't allow for that, and to as great of an extent. And I think that that's a good thing for the continuing of our species.
No, you're absolutely right. Humanism is the next step in our evolution. Religion was important. Once we evolved from the apes, religion became very important because it started answering some of the questions that our complex minds were able to ask. The problem is that we're getting to a point where we're able to answer a lot more questions. And so that's where humanism comes into play, as far as taking over from the mysticism and the fantasy and starting to rely more on the scientific facts and technology that we have achieved at this point in human evolution.
Mm-hmm. I think, wasn't it Neil Tyson deGrasse or some other famous scientist or philosopher?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, sorry. Basically said that religions are failed sciences. Sciences are attempts to explain the world around them that have failed, but they are still cling to strongly. So.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, if you think about, the book of Genesis, it basically tells you, how the world works, how it's created, a lot of the questions that scientists are trying to answer today. So, it was the first attempt of humans to explain nature, to have answers to all these questions that everybody has asked themselves over the ages. But it's kind of a mixed bag, though, for me with religion. I mean, religion has definitely done a lot of good, and it has helped to progress society. And there's been periods where religions have championed societal progress, but there have been many periods of time. I mean, when religion has championed progress in society, but there's been many periods of time where religious views and religious beliefs have pulled back and held back societal progress.
Stem cells.
Yeah. And it's happening today too.
Crusades.
Right. Any of those things. But on the good side of it, and I'll give you an example. When the Ottoman Empire was expanding and they were taking over parts of Southeast Europe, a lot of the population there was Christian, and the Ottoman Empire was, they were Muslim. And that difference in religion allowed those local populations to preserve themselves. And hundreds of years later, when the Ottoman Empire fell apart, those same countries that used to exist reemerged with roughly the same population and roughly the same borders and all that. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me.
Even from a personal, small scale standpoint, I worked at a grocery store throughout high school and college. it was more of a a food service where restaurants and churches and things would get their stuff. So hey, I always believe I'm in a job, and the company I work for is getting paid because people are getting together and eating or meeting. So from that, I even as I was considering my own faith and religion, I was thinking, well, even if this isn't true, at least it's turning the economy, and it's money's being spent, and people are working out that way. Let's do a little lightning round. As a humanist, when someone says, "I'll pray for you," how do you react?
I used to say thank you, and I still do if I know the person well. But I started to get kind of snarky and say, "I'll talk to my imaginary friend on your behalf as well."
I'm okay with it because I know that people mean well. I mean, I definitely say thank you, and I look at the intent of the person. I've been thinking about what I can say, and usually thank you is the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, that's the way I am too. I say thank you if it's somebody that I care about or I feel like they have a good intention. But if it's kind of like a nutbag, then I'll usually ask them to pray for the lottery winning numbers or something too. If they could throw that in there, I'd appreciate it.
Do you guys still say "bless you" when someone sneezes?
I do.
I've recently been just ignoring that kind of stuff because I don't know what to say.
I usually say Gesundheit,
Yeah.
There you go.
which is, I think, German for good health to you, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, somewhere along those. So how would you guys feel, or how would you react if someone invites you to their church?
I just tell them I'm not a believer. That usually stops it. Or starts an even better conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed to visiting churches and things like that and enjoying the rituals. I mean, I haven't been to any churches recently, but I'm not opposed to visiting, even if I'm not invited, just as an educational experience, or
Did you
just to
spend
see where things are today in churches and stuff like that.
Did you spend a lot of time in churches when you were younger, V?
Never. No, my parents have never taken me to any churches, anything like that. Actually, the first time I stepped into a church was just before I left for the U.S. My best friend was studying to become, I thought he was going to become a priest or a pastor, but he is now a monk at a monastery. And he said that I shouldn't leave without getting baptized. So my first time in the church was getting baptized, and after that, once I came to the U.S., I just kind of went to church on Easter because it's a fun, it's an interesting ceremony at the Christian Orthodox churches. They walk outside around the church and stuff like that, and
Is
you
that
get
the one
to
where
mingle with some people.
men and women sit on opposite sides?
No.
Yeah, I could see it being interesting if you've never gone much before, but I've worn enough suits and been to church enough times, I think I would be perfectly fine if I never did it again.
I mean, I visit monasteries because of the cultural and historical enrichment that I get out of it.
I like to see the church's architecture sometimes,
Oh yeah, I agree.
especially the big old Catholic churches. Love the architecture.
Yeah, I think it's great that we have so many, here in Fort Wayne that look spectacular. You just kind of walk around downtown, you see First Presbyterian, and the one across from the Botanical, which name escapes me now, but we have several that are awesome to look at.
I think religion has fostered the arts a great deal. I mean, that was like the one central point in communities and they had a lot of money too, and then they would hire the best artists to do their stuff, like Sistine Chapel.
Or Gutenberg and the printing press and the Bible.
Yeah, on and on, yeah.
So I think it's pretty obvious that we don't hold any beliefs, but of those here on the call that did at one time hold a belief, what were some of the factors that caused that faith to start breaking down and made you start questioning that?
Science. We know where the Earth came from.
I mean, you can say that. What think specifically? Kind of take it, step by step.
Oh goodness.
I mean, you say science. Was there a particular person, an interview that you saw? Was there an article you read? What were some of the kind of the micro transactions that happened?
It's hard for me to go back and trace the actual path for me personally, but you just start to when you're a kid and you ask questions like, where did I come from, Mommy? Or where did the earth come from? You get an answer, well, let's turn to Genesis chapter 1. And that's where you came from, and that's supposed to suffice. And it does for a lot of people. But when you start to question it, and I can't tell you exactly why I started to question it without it being a very long story, then you start asking the questions, well, where did the earth come from? And so you actually start looking into that. And then you start looking and seeing the experiments that were done and all the different ideas that people had that kind of made sense and started to paint the picture a little more clearly over time. And then eventually you get to, what we know about molecules and how sun's a big furnace creating all the elements that we have. I mean, it all starts to click together. You can trace it all the way back to the Big Bang. You can't find anywhere where the supernatural exists. There's cause and effect and everything. So, where is this ghost? Where is this spirit? Where is it? I can't find it anywhere. And there's never been any very good conclusive evidence that would make me believe that it's actually there. So that's in a nutshell, the tipping point for me.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, it's, you definitely don't have to believe in a Big Bang to be an atheist. Atheist is strictly just not believing in a god or a deity. But I mean, if religious people are making that claim that that's how the earth started, and their religious texts are their proof, you can definitely hold those up to scrutiny, and every time it doesn't hold water. The facts aren't there, and it's not true. So I know I was raised in a religious household, and Dee was. Anyone else that was, or the other three guys, or you guys always been an atheist?
I was raised in a fairly religious household. Parents lapsed from time to time due to personal difficulties, but for the most part, I was raised in a very religious household in a very religious larger family. And over time, I was always a very science-minded child, always looking at books and encyclopedias, wanting to learn more things. And I don't know, I just came to have more questions than what the Bible could answer. And then so I started asking other people, and they just said, well, just consult the Bible. It's in there. I couldn't find it. So
we have read the Bible. I think that's one reaction that at least I've gotten before. Oh, you're an atheist. You need to read the Bible. All the answers are in the Bible. So yeah, I think it's more refreshing when you have a secular person who says, "Oh yeah, I've read the Bible. I know what's in it, and I still don't agree with it."
Yeah, when I read the Bible, I was like, this is not what I've been taught in Sunday school, and that's not what the preacher talks about. Like, there's parts of it in there, but overall, I thought it was a horrible book. So I looked to the Apocrypha, the deleted chapters of the Bible.
Yeah, right.
And even that was like even more confusing. And so I asked the elders, a couple of the elders at my parents' church, and they didn't even know anything about it.
Yeah,
it's like they're all old guys that were just like, well, read the Bible. I did.
I think the Apocrypha was taken out of the King James Version of the Bible in 1885. It wasn't even that long ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. And I can't imagine. I was just thinking the other day. Could you imagine if you had never heard of the Bible? Those of us who have read it, and you just were going to a library one day, and you're like, "Oh, Holy Bible," and you took it out and you read the whole thing. And can you imagine like calling up your friend and being like, "Dude, you have got to read this book. It's incredible. It answers all the questions I've ever had about life. It's right here." I'm sorry.
Which is so weird. I mean, when you come out of that, when you step out of that, from behind that veil of religion, and you have that perspective, when you think, oh man, like this is a very odd story. This is something that's very weird. Right now where I'm hearing political ads on the radio saying, "Oh, we need to get behind candidate X because they are a godful person and they, believe this and bringing God back to our country is what will make it right again." It's you just think to yourself, why? What is causing that? It's so removed from my thinking.
I remember doing that though, so I remember the feeling.
Yeah, it would be very hard to convince someone that has never seen the book until they were, say, 30 years old, and you show them the book and tell them, hey, you should believe this. It's not a chance. I mean, there's so many things that don't match reality. They directly contradict reality. So many immoral things in those books. If you have a well-formed mind that you try to force this on, I don't think you're going to have much luck.
Well, we were kind of talking about this, me and my wife, the other day, just thinking one book that has so many different interpretations, or a leader figure as Jesus who speaks in parables, and everything can be taken differently. If God really said, "This is the law, this is my word," it would have been black and white. It would have been completely without any gray area in there. It would have been absolute, and it's just not there. You can't. You can read the same verse 10 times and get 11 different interpretations.
Yeah, and it also would have been presented immediately at the time of his ascension, and
not maybe in generations after the fact,
and maybe in a format that most people could use, considering like over 75% of the population that's ever existed has been illiterate, and on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, when most people come to the Lord or come to religion, I guess I won't say most people, but those who do come to it later in life, where say they get invited to someone's church, like, oh, hey, yeah, God's the greatest, and you should join us and stuff. At that point, are they really going through and reading the entire Bible, or are they taking others' words for it and taking that on faith and trust instead of doing all the research?
Oh, they're definitely not doing the research. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they're not doing the research.
I think there's very few people that used to be, atheists the entire life, and all of a sudden, at 30 years old, they discover the Bible and decide to adopt all the views in it. I think that would be a very, very rare occurrence.
I did see one video. It was, I believe it was on the official Mormon YouTube page. And it was a woman who described herself as an atheist at one time. And what brought her to the Lord, or her point of view, was after she had her first child, she could not imagine that this was just chance and that this wasn't a wonderfully created being, and that is what caused her to have to turn to God.
Well, that's just a misunderstanding of the science, but okay.
What you mean? Genetically, we're not supposed to have emotions towards our children, so that we don't want to eat them or kill them or abandon them?
Evolution and altruism and all those other key terms that people only understand if they take biology classes and actually understand them. Yes, those are completely apart from whatever garbage you think you came up with in your own mind. Yes.
I have friends who are just absolutely convinced that they were healed of something miraculously, got in a car accident, hand was mangled, and then, it just was better. And man, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but it's hard for me to just say, well, you're lying. But I guess if God does exist and that's the way he works, then I'm going to need him to heal my maimed hand for me to believe it, because it's just it's too convenient. It's never worked for me.
Yeah, but it's also very selective. Why do some people deserve that kind of stuff and others not?
Oh, yeah.
God hates amputees.
Yeah, right? Show me someone that regrew a limb. Exactly.
Well, yeah. Many times, unfortunately, it comes back upon it's kind of like a victim shaming. Like, oh, you weren't healed because your faith wasn't strong enough. Mm-hmm. You had doubt.
Of course.
So it's kind of like, well, it would have happened if you, would have put more trust in God.
There was a time. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, except every time that scientists evaluate such scenarios and try to replicate them, they find that there is zero influence of anything outside of nature and randomness. So it's interesting.
I can speak from experience on that one too. We used to, in the church that I grew up in, we didn't have first aid. We had third aid. Third aid. So first aid was praying to God. The second aid was finding somebody else to pray with you. And then if that didn't work, then you would go to third aid, which was the actual office with Band-Aids and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh.
Hilarious.
But we would pray for everything. Scraped knees, doesn't matter what it was. But I can tell you for sure from my thousands of attempts at this experiment, never once have I seen a scraped knee heal.
If the church catches on fire, are there 3 different fire engines that go to the scene?
Yeah, right. I don't know. Never had to deal with that problem. But we used to do, prayer vigils, 24 hours straight of prayer that would go on for months. People would just take shifts and sit in this room and you would pray constantly for this thing. And it never seemed to help any. But, humans are still here, so I'm assuming that they still believe that they are the reason that we still exist because they prayed for 24 hours a day, months on end.
Well, but you could say the same thing about rain dances by Native Americans, right? So they sit there and dance for rain for days on end until rain actually comes, and they're like, "Oh, it worked." It's like, well, no, it didn't.
Right. It seems so
but
obvious.
there have been prayer studies to try to evaluate whether prayer works or not. And I think the funny thing of those was that when you tell people that other people are praying for their healing, actually there's a slight negative result. So their recovery is slower and all that. And someone was saying it's more like a performance anxiety. The people that know they're being prayed for.
Which is very odd if you consider that, the hospital system, when you have many hospitals that have bear a saint's name, specifically here in Fort Wayne, St. Joseph Hospital, where you have that right in the name and that's expected in as part of your care.
Well, that's funny. So you're saying, V, that there's an actual negative effect when people are praying for you?
If you know that they're praying for you, I don't know. I read that somewhere. I don't know how true it is. Or, I haven't dug in the details of it. I think it said that when people didn't know that they're being prayed for, it has zero effect. But when they knew that they're being prayed for, it may have had a slight negative effect. So,
well, there's a great way to answer that question. What do you say to somebody when they say they're going to pray for you? Just like, hey, do me a favor, don't pray for me.
Well, I mean, what I dislike about when people say that they'll pray for you is the fact that they actually think that they're doing something useful. Where if they actually wanted to do something useful, they might come by and maybe visit you in the hospital, or they might come by and, I don't know, help you around the house while you're sick, or, anything that would actually help you that they're not doing because they think that praying on Sunday or at night before they go to bed is actually helping you when it's not. And it might be taking just the same amount of time, too.
Yeah.
I think that liking a post on Facebook does more positive than prayer does, but that could just be me.
Well, I always love those posts that just say type amen. 1 share equals 1 prayer. It's slacktivism. It's giving that false sense of productivity.
Selectivism. I like that.
It's dangerous. It's just such a great way to waste a good portion of your life. Thinking that the problem is solved in the supernatural instead of being solved by humans and their effort. Humanism, that's the virtue of humanism. Things actually get done.
I don't know, gentlemen, what else is there to talk about?
Well, here's an interesting topic. So what about treatment of people in terms of like LGBT issues, race issues, ethnic conflicts, things like that? Like, how would humanism be better at handling those in our society as a philosophy as opposed to religion.
I think it kind of comes back to something that you touched base on earlier about the right you have to swing your arms. Stops at my nose. Are they hurting anyone else? No. Are they happy in their decision? Yes. What is the harm in that? I'm speaking specifically about LGBT rights, things like that. Like, oh, their marriage has nothing to do with your marriage. The sanctity of your vows to your spouse has no bearings on theirs.
Yeah, there are some countries where being part of the LGBT community is actually illegal, and you can go to jail for being gay.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like you see the same sort of thing here in the United States, where you have people trying to pass anti-sodomy laws. I don't know how you enforce that necessarily, but they're still on the books. They're still, trying to fight that battle.
Do you think that those are necessarily rooted in religion, though?
That's a good question, and I don't know how to answer that. But I guess from my perspective, the only person I've ever seen, or the only type of person I've ever seen, speaking out against sodomy or sodomites, have been those of faith.
Well, even if it doesn't come specifically from a religious faith, it's still a lot of the stuff is based upon weird superstitions or just weird ideas people have. They get continued over the generations, then get worse. They never get fixed because people don't choose to think about them critically. So, I don't know.
No. That's a good point to bring up, because some belief systems definitely hold people up that have not had vaginal intercourse as being a guy. And then there are other belief systems that also hold as value the women not having that either. And so then you have this situation where apparently it's better to sodomize than it is to engage in behavior that may actually result in a child, or in a pregnancy at least. And when you start valuing certain behaviors over others, you start encouraging certain behavior that shouldn't be acceptable at all. And that's why you have priests that engage in sodomizing behavior with young altar boys, because then, it doesn't count as actual sex, so they're still technically a virgin, so they can still have a higher regard once they reach the gates of heaven. That's a problem.
Have you guys heard of Vice News?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you seen that?
I like them.
Yeah, they're great. Have you seen that documentary they did? It's some South American country. I should probably look it up real quick. It's about it's a pretty religious group, culture, I believe Catholic, and somehow they have gone from premarital sex to actually having sex with donkeys. And like the people know about it, and they do it, and it's just a way of like relieving the sexual tension. And it's an amazing documentary. I know it's a really weird topic, but it's totally for the most part okay in this culture, and they even get somebody to do it for them on video.
I would have to check that out.
Yeah, it's very enlightening into the.
Are you sure that wasn't Tijuana? I've heard of those sort of shows.
Yeah. I've heard of donkey shows. Yes.
Well, this isn't an actual donkey show. This is, I think, a little more
intimate.
Intimate into the culture. Like apparently, from the documentary, most of the men, their first sexual experience is with a donkey.
Okay. Ew.
Yeah. I don't know why I brought that up. Vice News, though. Check it out, guys.
Will do.
Does that come into someone's mind to do something like? Never mind.
Well, I mean, okay, it's not an exact parallel, but I mean, we definitely see abstinence-only education in schools. So what does that lead to? If they're not having traditional intimacy, then they're going to find other ways around it that they believe still keeps that sanctity, if you will. So, I mean, yes, you can go to the extreme of donkeys, but I think you can also find that in more common interactions here in the United States.
And the disturbing thing for me, being a fan of snakes, is seeing snakes used in certain respects that they should never, ever be introduced to.
Which is another great documentary. I think it's called the Appalachian people or the mountain people or something. Yeah, they're about the snake handling church.
Yes.
Those
Where
guys.
I mean, they don't flat out say it, but snakes only act the way that they do in those churches because they are malnourished, they're malhandled. They aren't treated with respect, and people get bit, and people think that they have that godly antivenom, but people have died.
The head pastors have died a couple generations in a row, actually. That's the funny thing.
Yeah, there was.
And people still go.
Yeah, I remember there was a father, son, and
Yep.
then grandson of the original person who all died.
Yep, that's right.
Oh wow.
I believe I've Googled snake handling churches in Indiana, and I want to say that the only one I saw around here was in River Haven. So we may have to do some more research on that.
That may be fun. Yeah.
I found the title of that documentary. It's called "The Asses of the Caribbean." It's about it takes place in the northern coast of Colombia. So Vice News. There you go for your viewing entertainment tonight.
I'll pass.
Wow.
Yeah.
But okay, so let me wrap it back up to the LGBT issues because we went to.
Wow, we went way off the rails there.
Yeah. So I was watching. I don't know if you guys ever saw it. There was some. It was last year. There was some kind of freedom rally, and a bunch of the Republican candidates were there and all that. And there was this pastor named Kevin Swanson. Have you guys heard that name before?
No, I'm not familiar.
I believe I have
Yeah.
on a random podcast I listened to, but it's been a while. Refresh us.
Well, he was talking about how America needs to repent from their sins and this and that, and at one point in time, he straight out called that we should kill the gays, and then he said that we shouldn't because they need time to repent for their sins, but they deserve to. It was kind of confusing. He was all over the place, and he said how if he was invited to a gay wedding, he would rather cover himself in poop and sit in front of the door of the church or wherever that
That's where I heard him.
wedding was taking place, as opposed to
Yeah,
participating in it.
he would cover himself in sackcloth and ashes, and he would smear feces all over himself outside of the church. Yeah, that's where I've heard of that guy from.
Yep.
Oh man.
So those kind of people exist in the U.S. too, and that was at a rally where a bunch of the the presidential candidates, went to that. Now I don't know that any of them said that they agree with that guy, but still. So I find on those kind of issues, religion to be very divisive and has a very bad influence on society. So what do you guys think about more of racial type issues? I mean, to me, when you look at humanism and how it relies on science to find out what's true and what isn't, if you look at people's DNA, you see that the difference in races is one or two genes here and there, which is practically nothing. So, from the scientific perspective, race just doesn't really exist. What do you guys think? Has religion treated races equally over time? Have they not?
Well, I think that if you take a baby as soon as it's born and baptize it in bleach, we'll all be the same color and we won't have to worry about race anymore, huh? That sounds good.
Extreme,
Yeah.
But, all right.
You could just give it a tan. It'd go the other way,
That's true. But the point is
Not
that's
that it matters,
ridiculous.
but
That's the point. Is that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous focusing on something that's not really an issue in the first place, because of exactly what you said. The fact that there's actually more genetic differences within a race than there are between races. That's just the reality of being the human race. Is that we interbreed so much that really, since us completely dispersing out of Africa, we haven't really truly maintained separate populations for long enough to establish different subspecies, aka different races of humans. We're still all the same subspecies. We're still all the same race in actuality. It's just superficial differences that are very, very minor and are kind of correlated with location, but not necessarily.
True. So how about to me during slavery times, a lot of people used religion to justify slavery. You guys think that's a fair point?
Well, slavery existed in the Bible. So.
That's right.
True.
Absolutely, it's a fair point. Well, even if you, I mean, I think religions, even now, are still a big part of like the nation states of the world. So if somebody is in a different country and they have a different religion and they are also a different color, then it would be easy, I could see, just pigeonholing anybody with darker colored skin or lighter colored skin as being bad because they are associated with that particular religious point of view. So
I think it's a lot about in groups and out groups. We have lighter skin or darker skin, and look at them over there. They have a different color skin than us. They must be bad or they must be different. So we must, keep our heritage, or we must, not accept them into our group. And you see that with skin color, with nationality, just across different arbitrary borders. And you see that with different religions. I don't accept a Muslim because I'm a Hindu, or I don't accept a Buddhist because I'm a Christian, and it's all the same thing.
It's just a lack of critical thinking in general.
Do you guys think that with less religion, we'll be able to kind of bring all the races closer together?
Yes.
I mean, I'm of that opinion, but
I was just thinking about this from a nationality standpoint. If religion were toned back, we have as much, I'm American, this is my country. But it's hard to think about that because that national identity and that religion is so kind of intertwined that it's almost hard to separate that out.
True. And there probably would be a lot of unintended consequences if, somehow we're able to just wipe out religion. Not that would happen anytime soon, or that I'm necessarily advocating for that, but
you think people have to be ready for it. Like if you would have met me 10 years ago and somehow were able to abolish religion in me, boy, I would have been a total mess. I wouldn't have known what to do with myself. I wouldn't have had anything else to hang on to. It was quite a process for me to go through that. And I'm assuming it would be similar for everybody else. And you would just have a bunch of people with maybe wandering aimlessly, pointless in life, not knowing what to do. It takes a while to make the transition of living for something to living for something else to living for yourself, or finding the highest endeavor for yourself. It's a big, long process.
And I think part of that kind of plays into how much race plays into culture, plays into ethnicism. So, like, if you were to say, hey, let's get rid of the Jews, are you talking about the Jewish culture? Are you talking about the Jewish race? Are you talking about the Jewish religion? All those things kind of tie in together to define a group of people. Whether we're talking about Muslims or, Western Europeans, all those things kind of tie into what defines each of those different types of people. And so it's very difficult to take religion from those different groups of people because, as we've noticed, there's really not a group of people who define themselves as atheist other than atheists. They're not defining themselves as only being whites, only being blacks, only being Middle Easterns. They consist of a large group of people because they perforate all groups of people all over the globe. So once we can start to get to that point where we can separate religion from culture, from race, that's the point at which we can start to unify more than diversify.
Amen.
That is all the time we have for you this week. This has been the Hoosier Humanist Hour. Be sure to check out FreeThought Fort Wayne on Facebook and Secular Fort Wayne on Meetup.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope your days are filled with logic, reasoning, and the eternal quest for knowledge.
serious.